One of the classic stories of backstage incidents in wrestling involves Dynamite Kid and his beef with Jacques Rougeau. Now, I have read so many different accounts of what happened from people. There is a certain consistency to it, but different people who were there or who were in the locker room that night have different accounts of what happened and the build up to it, because it was not a one night incident. This is something that was building for a period of weeks, if not months. But I've read so many, different accounts of it, listened to so many shoot interviews about this. And since I don't know that I would have a reason to talk about this again after this, for those who have never heard the story before, here's what happened. From piecing together different parts from Jacques, from Dynamite in his book, Bret Hart in his book, Jimmy Hart in his book. Everybody's got a book. I may write a book. I don't know what it's going to be about, but I feel left out here. Anyway, this goes all the way back to the fall of 1988. So this was only a couple of months before the Bulldogs gave their notice and left WWE. The Bulldogs did not like the Rougeaus. No reason in particular. I think Dynamite really was the one. He didn't like him. He didn't like him. But they worked matches together with no problem. One night at a live event, Rougeaus come back from their match, and Curt Hennig is there. And Curt is acting all weird, and Jacques, is looking at him, and basically Curt's saying to him, you should check your gym bag, because something may have happened. So he checks, and I think some things might have been missing. Whatever it was, Jacques suspected that the Bulldogs had done something to his stuff, because they had a reputation for ribbing people and playing practical jokes, and some pretty nasty ones too, and messing with people's belongings. And so as it turns out, and Jacques did not know this at the time, it was not the Bulldogs who messed with his gym bag that night. It was Curt Hennig. And Hennig also had a rep for playing ribs and practical jokes on people, although I don't think it was anything mean-spirited like what the Bulldogs would do, like total destruction of people's property and whatnot. I mean, he would tie people's bags together or put padlocks on them, and which I'm sure if it happened to you, you wouldn't be too happy about that, but it's not like he would set your bag on fire or anything like that. The Bulldogs might. I don't think Curt Hennig would do that. But this is only a few months after Curt had come back. He was already causing mischief. I say come back. He had a very brief sort of run in the early 80s as a babyface in WWE that sometimes gets forgotten about, if you could even call it a run. But he had only debuted as Mr. Perfect a few months earlier. He had not even debuted on television yet as Mr. Perfect. He was only doing certain live events. And he was already causing mischief. Fast forward a couple days later, there's another live event. Same thing. Only this time I think Jacques came back and Curt had padlocked their gym bags together. Now Jacques is pissed. And he says, I'm going to talk to Pat Patterson about this. And of course, Pat was Vince McMahon's stooge. He was Vince McMahon's right-hand man. And so the implication was he's going to rat out the Bulldogs and get them in trouble. Now, Curt Hennig hears this. And what is the first thing he does? He immediately runs to the Dynamite Kid to tell him that Jacques was going to go rat them out and get them in trouble. So Hennig is playing cards. He's backstage with Jacques, and he's playing cards with him. And Dynamite walks into the room. He smacks Jacques Rougeau right in the ear. He smacks him right in the head. He mounts him. He starts punching him and raining blows down upon him. He may have kicked him in the face, too. Ray Rougeau sees this, Jacques' brother. He breaks it up. He gets hurt as well. I think he hurt his knee. I think he ended up on crutches. So for over a week now, a week goes by, Jacques is plotting his revenge. He wasn't known for being like a tough guy or anything like that. Dynamite, that's a different story. But Jacques just felt like he had lost respect for getting beaten up by the smaller guy, getting, bullied around here by these guys. He felt like, look, I got to do something. I can't let this go. This cannot go unpunished. So he literally is preparing the stories are comical. Like he's in his hotel room, he's shadow boxing, he's beating up the pillows and the mattresses. Like he is getting ready for a fight. He's fixing for a fight. It's like some covert operation, right? Planning how and when he would get back at Dynamite. So I'm in the middle, it's funny, I'm in the middle of watching, actually I just finished Narcos Mexico, great show by the way. I've seen DEA operations with less preparation than Jacques Rougeau plotting his revenge on the Dynamite Kid. It's comical. So finally, it's the big day. It is the big day. They're backstage. It's at one of these marathon superstars TV tapings. Now Vince McMahon has been made aware of there being some tension between the Bulldogs and between the Rougeaus, and that bad things might happen, and he wants to nip this in the bud as quickly as possible. He calls for a talent meeting, and he's going to warn them that fighting is not to be tolerated. If you start a fight, you're going to be fired. Well, the Rougeaus did not attend that meeting, so they're having a meeting in the back. The Rougeaus are out. This is before the show, so the arena is empty, and they're just hanging out in the ring. Jimmy Hart comes by, and he finds the Rougeaus in the ring, and, he says, hey, Vince wants everybody together for this meeting, and Jacques says, well, we're not going. And he starts to thank Jimmy for everything he's done for them. Jimmy Hart, of course, was their manager at that time. And I've never heard anybody say one bad word, not one cross word about Jimmy Hart. Think of all the countless careers that this guy has helped over the years. And even with his music. People sometimes don't think he wasn't just an on-screen performer. He was for a time, I guess, I don't know if this was, he was doing it in WCW as well, but I guess he would have been working alongside Jim Johnston for a time. His musical contributions, he helped do the music for the Rougeaus even. All-American boys, right? We don't like heavy metal, we don't like rock and roll, all we like to listen to is Barry Manilow. That's an underrated, that is an underrated theme. He also produced the Shawn Michaels Sexy Boy theme song. That was him. That was Jimmy. NWO Wolfpack. That was Jimmy Hart. He produced it. So anyway, Jimmy finds all of this very strange. Why are they thanking me? Why are they talking this way? But he doesn't suspect anything. So after the meeting, Dynamite is in the cafeteria. He's eating with a bunch of people. Vince sees the Rougeaus walking in the hallway, I guess going towards the cafeteria, and he wants to meet. He says, look, I want to meet with you guys later. He goes, I can't meet with you right now. I got to go meet with Hogan, but you and I have to meet later. So Jacques realizes at that point, he goes, oh shit. He goes, if we're going to do this, we need to do this now, because once we meet with Vince, we can't then go and beat the shit out of this guy and then plead ignorance, right? So they lie in wait outside the cafeteria. They are waiting for Dynamite to come out of the lunchroom. This reminds me of some of these like lunchroom brawls I would see in school back in the day. Or any kind of brawl, really. I mean, only one time in my life, I think, that I look up at the clock. It was one of these things where I was waiting for the clock to hit 3. It was like meeting at sundown, and everybody was going to go to the playground and line up for some big after-school fight. So anyway, they're lying in wait, right? Pat Patterson comes out of the cafeteria. So he's thinking, great, now Pat's here. Here comes Dynamite. Dynamite's leaving the cafeteria. He's all alone. This is the moment that Jacques has been waiting for. Jacques says hello to the Dynamite Kid, and before Dynamite can even respond back to him, Jacques smashes him right in the mouth. Now, there's been a debate about what he hit him with. Dynamite, I think, is of the opinion that he got hit in the face with brass knuckles. The story has been that he hit him in the mouth with a roll of quarters. I think it was a roll of quarters, but again, it could have been brass knucks. I personally would not want to be hit in the mouth with either one of those things, although I guess if I had to choose of the two, a roll of quarters maybe wouldn't be as bad. But whether it was one or the other is dependent upon who you believe. So the consensus anyway is that it was a sucker punch. Didn't see it coming. Got hit in the mouth with a foreign object. Knocks out 4 of his teeth. Right on the spot, right from the first blow. 4 teeth, boom, on the floor. Blood everywhere. And Dynamite does not even go down. He's rocked, but he does not go down. Pat Patterson is seeing this. He's all like, what the fuck are you doing? Ray Rougeau now has Patterson up against the wall, telling him, mind your own business, don't get involved, this has nothing to do with you. Pat's yelling at Jacques to stop. Jacques is just throwing jabs now at Dynamite. Remember, he's been practicing all week for this. He's throwing jabs at this guy. Dynamite finally is down to one knee. Bad News Brown comes over. He pulls Jacques off of him. Davey Boy finally shows up. He pulls Dynamite away. It's like everybody goes to their corner. Jimmy Hart is at the other end of the building while all of this is going on. He's with the Honky Tonk Man doing promos. at the other end of the arena, all of a sudden people start running by going, oh, Jacques just beat up the Dynamite Kid. Patterson gives Dynamite some money. He says, go to the hospital. Get stitched up, get fixed up, go, leave. The Rougeaus now, they're ready to meet with Vince. They did what they came to do. So they go to Vince's office. Vince looks, he sees blood all over Jacques' hands. And his eyes just light up. Now, Hogan is in Vince's office. Hogan is still meeting with Vince. Hogan turns around and he takes one look at Jacques' bloody hands and he says, see you later, brother, and he walks out. Now, allegedly, also, not only did Hogan see this and walk out, but Macho Man heard the commotion. He opened the door to his dressing room and he took one look at what was going on, over by Vince's office, and he saw Jacques and the bloody hands and everything. And Savage just immediately closed his door. He was like, yeah, I don't want any part of this. These guys did not want to get involved. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage wanted no part of what was going on. So the Rougeaus, of course, they think they're fired. And Vince says, look, I'm not firing you. He goes, wait here. I'm going to go find the Bulldogs. Not realizing, I guess, that Pat Patterson had given them money to go to the hospital, so they had already left. Meanwhile, Jacques and Ray, they don't know what's going to happen when Vince comes back, or, if Vince left, now the Bulldogs are kind of waiting in the wings and they're going to come into the office. They break the legs off of some chairs that were in Vince's office so they at least have weapons in case the Bulldogs come charging in and they try to do something. Vince comes back. He's like, all right, they left. And they say to Vince, look, our bags are over down that way in the dressing room. A lot of their friends are going to be in the locker room. We don't feel safe. We don't feel comfortable going back in there by ourselves. And Vince says, oh, you're right. And he personally escorts them to the locker room so they can get their bags. Everybody's giving them dirty looks. Vince escorts them out to the parking lot just to make sure nothing's happening. And when Dynamite realized that Jacques wasn't getting fired later on, that's when he decided, all right, we got to give our notice. And that's when he and Davey Boy gave their notice to the company. Now, they did not leave right away. What happened was that Vince met with both teams a few weeks later. Again, it was at another live show. They're in the back. He gets the two teams together to try to hash things out and promise that you guys are going to be able to work together and that it's all water under the bridge. They shake hands. They say all the right things. They have the airing of grievances. Everything seems copacetic. Everything seems okay. The Rougeaus, of course, they said all the right things. They did all the right things. They didn't buy it. They didn't buy it. And so everywhere they went, they watched each other's backs. When one guy would shower, the other one would be on lookout. If the Bulldogs were staying at this hotel, they would make sure they checked into a completely different hotel. Imagine having to work under these conditions. It's like being in prison. Now we get to the Survivor Series in '88. This was the last show for the Bulldogs. They were on the card. They were actually on opposing teams with the Rougeaus. Dynamite, of course, whatever he said in that meeting, he didn't believe any of it. He had nothing but revenge on his mind. And he had nothing to lose. This is why the Rougeaus were so worried. Not just because they figured Dynamite was full of shit and he's going to get revenge, but they already gave their notice. They're on their way out. What are they worried about? Getting fired? They already quit. Vince knew this. He's not stupid. So he booked it where Ray Rougeau would get rolled up very early in the match by Bret Hart, and the Rougeaus would be eliminated. And I think it was like maybe 5 minutes into the match. And the Rougeaus were pinned, and they went to the back. The idea being, we'll get them out of here early and keep the Bulldogs in the match for a while so that by the time the Bulldogs get to the back, the Rougeaus are long gone. And that's what happened. And what's ironic is, how Vince McMahon was trying to calm things down between these two teams. He told the Bulldogs at one point, again, as the story goes, he told the Bulldogs, and Dynamite in particular, look, don't do anything stupid here. Because the Rougeaus, they know people. They're up in Montreal, they know people. And they knew the Rougeaus were also very friendly in the back with Dino Bravo. And Dino Bravo had, I guess the implication in mentioning Bravo is that Bravo was always believed to know people who could do bad things, that he was mobbed up, or his family in some way was mobbed up. The belief is that Bravo was murdered. You know, when he died, clearly he was murdered. He was shot to death numerous times in his home. I think he was sitting in his recliner and he was shot to death, execution style, that it was a mob hit. Something to do with the illegal cigarette trade that he or his family might have been involved in. So anyway, the implication here by Vince is these people may know other very bad people. Don't do something stupid. So this whole thing, the whole story is just completely insane to think about when you consider that it all got started by a Curt Hennig rib. The entire thing is all Mr. Perfect's fault.